theyeshiva.net.
Taf Chesam Ad Aleph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 lines from the top, Chesam Ad Aleph. The Gemarah quoted the reason, the Reb Chizda's explanation, how the Mishnah knew that we use Eir HaNeir. Mitzia from Mitzia, Mitzia from Chippus, Chippus from Chippus, Chippus from Neiris, Neiris from Neir. And then a Braisa from the Yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel, which supported this premise. And then a third Braisa, which once again quoted this limud, but also introduced the negative. That you can't do B'dikas Chametz not with the sun, not with the moon, and not with a torch, only with a candle. And even though there's no raya, there's a zecher from all these psukim. And the Braisa also added the words because the Eir HaNeir is the right thing for B'dika. In other words, it's better than everything else. So Achapes is Yerushalayim B'Neiris doesn't only teach me you could use Neiris, it's a good chippus, it's a kosher chippus, but actually you should use Neiris. It's interesting, Stama Ha'ara. The chippus of Yosef's Becher was not done with a candle. Because it says, Ha-boiker oir v'ha-noshim shulchu. It was morning. So probably it was done by the light of the sun. So actually we're learning Mitzia from Mitzia. And Mitzia from Chippus. And Chippus from Neiris. But that Chippus was not necessarily done with a Neir. It was the middle of the day. And as Rashi said, the middle of the day, on the Avdallah, the middle of the day, a candle is not so effective. Fakert. Eir HaNeir machshav. Because as the Gemara says, Shrage B'tir Mayhani, when you have a candle in a lit up room, especially outside, they were outdoors because they were on their donkeys. They weren't indoors. So l'chayr over there they used the light of the sun. Right? So you could say, okay, Chippus is also B'neiris, but it's not only B'neiris, because over there it wasn't B'neiris. I doubt the person of Yosef took a candle. You had to light a candle on the road, in the desert, wherever they were, and then start looking. They were outdoors. They were on the donkeys. They weren't indoors. They were traveling. They left the city. It says, hey, Mayatsu, they left, and he pursued them. So it was outdoors. Obviously, he used the sun. You don't use a candle outdoors in the middle of the day. If it was at night, Mela, this is a boiker oir. It was in the morning. So, right, so l'chayre, you can't say Chippus is only with a candle. Over there it says, Vayechapes, obviously not with a candle. That's the chiddush of this Braisa, that it says, Ein boitkin lo'ir achama. It's not just Neiris is oich gut. When it comes to B'dikas Chametz, it's Dafke B'neiris. Dafke B'neiris. Achapes is Yerushalayim B'neiris. Neir Hashem Nishmas Adam Chayfus. That's the way to do it.
The Gemara wasn't learning really from there that you need it's the Hekesh of Achapes.
Right, but I'm saying we went through the Vayechapes of Miketz. We went through the Vayechapes of Miketz. Over there, the Chippus is not B'neiris. It's interesting. Huh? By Lavan L'chayr also not. Vayechapes V'loi Matzah. Yeah. By Lavan L'chayr also not. Now, yeah. So if it would say there, if it would say in the pasuk over there that he was mechapes with the light of the sun, L'oir Hayoim, then L'chayr that we would be stuck, because we're learning from. You could learn that Chippus is L'oir Hayoim, right? But it doesn't say there, so you can't say prove that you need the L'oir Hayoim. Since we're learning from another pasuk that Neiris is a good chippus, so maybe we can say by B'dikas Chametz, Neiris is a good chippus. This Braisa is adding, not only it's good, it's the best. Zog the Gemarah, Hai lo'ir achama hechidami. You're telling me that you shouldn't use the light of the sun. What do you mean the light of the sun? Where do you want to use the light of the sun? What are you referring to? Do you mean chat b'chatze? You mean Pasha the courtyard? The courtyard, that's what you mean? In other words, you went out from your home into a chutzner. A chutzner was like what we would call a yard. There was no roof. It was surrounded by walls, and that was a courtyard. Naturally, a lot of homes opened up to a chutzner. Yeah, like you'll have an apartment building. Yeah, and people have a backyard, and they all play there, and they use this. So you had a chutzner that was shared by many homes. That's what you mean. And obviously, there's chametz there. So you do b'dikas chametz. So you're saying you want to use eir hachama. So you're saying don't use it. That's pshat. It can't be. Ha'amar Rava taught, Chatzer ein tzricha b'dika. A courtyard doesn't need b'dika, b'nei sha'arvim mitzuyin sham. Because the ravens or other birds are commonly flying around, and therefore we trust that they ate up any chametz that you put there. So you might have chametz there, because kids play around and people sometimes eat there, whatever it is. So there may be bread. They're fine. So for this, you have all the birds who fly freely in Chatzeres, and they're going to eat it up. So therefore, you don't need B'dika. If you don't need B'dika, then you don't need, so you're not using the light of the sun, you're not using any light. So you're going to tell me B'achsadra, Ela B'achsadra. When the Tana said you can't use Eirachama, obviously he has to be talking about a place where the light of the sun reaches. If there's no light of the sun, then there's no Havam in it to use the sun. So you might be talking about an Achsadra. Achsadra is what we would call, you have an art school, what does he say? A pavilion, okay. Achsadra is basically the term that Chazal used for a section that has a roof, but it doesn't have walls at all, or it has only a few walls. So for example,
Porch.
Yeah, it could be like a porch, but a chutzner is also like a porch, so it's a little different. Achsadra would be like, you have an achsadra, let's say, in a garden. What do we call it? We call it a gazebo, yeah. A gazebo. But in this case, it's not a gazebo with walls. It's just pillars, and there's only a roof. So therefore, you have the light of the sun there. Because it's not surrounded. It has a roof, so if it rains, you could sit there, but it's only based on pillars. There's only amudim, there's no mechitzas. That's one type of achsadra. That's like in a garden or in a field that they would have, etc. There was another type of achsadra, which was actually an extension of the home. It was an achsadra, you have this very often in Maseches Eruvin and Sukkah. An achsadra was an extension of them, like a foyer of the home, and it may have one wall, like the wall of the house, or maybe two walls, or maybe even three walls. But one of the walls, one of the mechitzas is completely open, so therefore it's under a roof. Since it's under a roof, you don't have the ravens and the birds roaming there freely and eating. So over there, you do need b'dikas chametz. And here, naturally, you could use the sun, because one wall or two walls or three walls are open, or maybe there's no walls b'chlal and it's just pillars. But even if there are walls, it could be one wall completely open, and therefore it was like a pavilion. You came out of your house and you had like an extension from the house. You still had a roof, right? You may have had the wall of the house, or another two walls, but one side was completely open. So it's like this is called an achsad, and over there you do b'dikas chametz, and you could do it lo'irachama. So the Brisa says no. Frag the Gemarah, that doesn't make sense, because Amar Rava, again, Rava taught us, achsadra lo'ir nivdekas. An achsadra, you could be boitik to its light, meaning you could be boitik by day with the light of the sun, and you don't need the light of the candle. Rashi says, lo'ir nivdekas, the second Rashi, Chasam and Aleph, lo'ir shalom nivdekas. You could be boitik, an achsadra, a pavilion with the light of the sun, ve'ein tzarich lo'avi lo'ir aner balayla. You don't need to light a candle for the achsadra. But why? What was Rava's point? Rava's point was, it's so light, it's so bright. Don't bother with a candle. You could be boidik by day, and be boidik by day with the sun. So then the Brisa can say, "Ein boitkin leracham." Rava knew it. L'chayir, when Rashi says boitka b'yoyim, he doesn't mean wait till you dalad nissen, because the Chachamim gave us man of b'dikas chametz at night. But he means you could do it earlier, before the night of Yud Nissen, the day of Yud Gimel Nissen, if you want, and you could use a oil. In other words, you could wait at night and use a candle, but Rava said you don't have to use it. A person had a shortage of a candle, he had a bigger house, whatever it is, he didn't have enough candles, so you could do it by day. From Rashi, it's mashma, that you could do it l'chatchila. That ain't tzarich l'havelas haner balayli. B'chal don't need a ner balayli. You could do it l'chatchila by yoyim. The Rambam in Hilchas Chametz Umatzah, Perek Beis and Shulchan Aruch, it's mashma that the pshat of the Gemarah is that even an achsadra you should do the night of the 14th l'oyer haner, because that's what the Chazal was saying. It just means if you forgot to do the achsadra, then tomorrow morning you don't have to bring a candle. You daled nissen in the morning. You could just use sunlight. When you boidik your house, you daled nissen in the morning. Let's say you forgot to do b'dikas chametz, or you got stuck somewhere, and you arrive in the morning, you daled nissen. You have to do b'dikas chametz with a candle. If you didn't do b'dikas chametz, then even in the middle of Pesach you do it with a candle. But that's all indoors. Outdoors, achsadra, Rava said you could do it lo'ir hachama. But in any case, you could do it with the sun. And for the Gemarah, lo tzricha la'aruba de b'cheder. He was talking about aruba skylight. A skylight in a room. It's indoors, and you have a skylight. Skylight means there's an opening in the ceiling, right? And you have sunlight coming in. Aruba is like a window. We call it a skylight in the room. That's what we're talking about. Because there's a window, sunlight comes in. So now, if there's no window, for sure you have a candle. What are you going to use? But since there's a window, so you could think you might use the sun. That's what the Bryce is saying, don't use the sun. What do you mean? If you're talking about right under the skylight, in other words, the place where the sunlight is reaching directly, what's the difference in that in a pavilion? What's a of a pavilion, yeah, and a room not? If it's being illuminated by the sun is coming right in. Who cares? Same idea. It means litznadin. It means the sides of the room, which are not directly being hit by the rays of the sun, because the light of the sun doesn't brighten up that place directly. So the light of the sun is insufficient for b'dikas chametz, and that's what the Brisa was saying. Use loy raner. Rashi says, "Udehecha what's the problem? Where is the light of the skylight not sufficient? Mamish parallel to the opening to the hole. Why not? It's dodden shulchur on the sides of the chur is an opening. The hole over there you don't use the eracham. Frek the Gemarah, so even though I didn't do it at night, and I want to be by the Yudalad in the morning, because let's say I forgot, so I want to use the sunlight, you say no. The corners of the room, the sides of the room, you have to use a candle, haner, yafel lebdika, as the Gemara will explain. Why? Why are we so busy with haner? And we have a raya from the Psukim. Achapes es Yerushalayim b'neiris, neir Hashem nishmusant. Frag the Gemarah, vavukaloi. The Bryce also said no sunlight, no moonlight, and no torch. Why not? Why not an avuk? Rava taught us. My diksiv, the pasuk says in Chavakoi, this is a nevuah, prophecy about the times of Mashiach. And the prophecy is elaborate, but it's all to bring out one point, that an avuka is a wonderful source of light and much better than a flame, much better than a single candle. As we explained, an avuka is a large flame, a torch, or many wicks interwoven together. Amar Rav, my diksiv, the pasuk says, V'noiga ka'artiya. V'noiga ka'artiya means, noiga is the light. Noiga means shining, right? Noiga is shining. So v'noiga, the light that is going to be experienced by tzaddikim, by the world in the future, is ka'artiya. It's going to be like the original light that Hashem created on the first day of creation. Bereshis bara l'kim es hashmayim v's'aretz. V'aretz ha'yisasoyu v'avayu v'yomer l'kim yihi or. V'yihi or. Ka'art is going to be like that or. That's what we call or shivas yimei bereshis. The original or of the 7 days of creation, which is not to confuse with our light. Our light that we have today is sunlight, which comes from where? From the sun, which was hung up, which was created when? On Wednesday. On Yom Revi. What about the oir of the first day? It says, Vayikra, Vayemer Lakim Yihi Oir, Vayi Oir, right? Vayara Lakim Esa'or Ki Toiv, it was good. Vayavdil, and he called Oir Yom and Choshech Laila, but the sun was created on Wednesday. This, Chazal explained, was a source of light. And it was a light that is different than the light of the sun. Chazal say on this light, that with this light you could see from one end of the world to the other end of the world. It wasn't a light that we're accustomed to. It was a type of light, a perception, like people sometimes describe, I saw near-death experiences, right? A clarity in their soul, like they'll watch their Sunday. Buildings don't block this light. It's a different type of light. It's a type of perception that pervades the entire universe. The Gemarah Chazal say it's a or shemistakel by misoifa oilam v'atsoif. This or was hidden. It was hidden. This is called the original or shivas hayamim, or shivas yimei bereshis. So the noiga, the light of Tzaddikim is karnayim, the rays, karnayim from the word karan, like Moshe's face was light. Karnayim, the rays, miyade will come from his hand, from Hashem, loy, to him, to the tzaddik. Hashem is going to cast his light on the tzaddik. V'sham, and the pasuk continues, V'sham, but there, by Hashem, chevyon uzay, is hidden its strength. Meaning, the real strength of the light is going to be by Hashem. So the Gemarah says, Rav explains, that Lamat Tzadikim Daimen B'fnei Shechina. To what can you compare the bright faces of the Tzadikim in the presence of the face of the Shechina? Kiner B'fnei Avuka. Like a candle in front of a torch. That's the comparison. So even though Noiga is going to be Gevaldik Ka'ertiya Karnayim Yadolai, but nonetheless, V'sham Chavye Nuzai, that the light of the tzaddik is Kiner B'fnei Avuka. Like a Neir in front of the Avuka. So what do we see from here? You can't compare the Neir to the Avuka. The Avuka is like the marshal for the Shechina itself, for Hashem himself, for Hashem's light. And the Neir is a derivative. The Neir is the rays of light that come to the tzaddik, which is Gevaldik. It's going to be like the Eir of Shivas Chimei Bereshis. But tzaddikim b'fnei Hashchina are like a Neir b'fnei Avuka. Why then would we dismiss the Avuka? Weiter, v'amar Rav Avuka la'avdala mitzvah min ha'mufchar. When it comes for Avdallah, Avuka is a mitzvah min ha'mufchar. It's the best thing to make boire moire eish by Havdalah on an Avuka. Like we use a Havdalah candle, which is many wicks, geflachten, woven together to make a flame, because it's a much greater light. Both of these statements of Rava teach us that the light of the Avuka is far more intense and far more powerful. Now it's interesting. The Gemarah has to bring two rayas that Avuka is greater than a Neir. A raya from Chavakoik and a raya from Havdalah. To the Santa Zach. It's not just a ha'ara. You could say Avuka is better than a Neir. Everybody could see it. He brings a raya from Rava, two rayas that Avuka is greater than a Neir. It's just interesting. I don't know the answer. I'm just wondering why the Gemarah...
Even from a Chapet to Yerushalayim.
It says Beneiris. By Yerushalayim it says Beneiris.
You didn't want to look too hard. So you see Avuka is better. They're also, no?
Yeah, you're right.
See also that,
In a Chanami, yeah, that's what the Gemara explained. That Neiris is a much smaller light, because he doesn't want to find all the small sins, just want to find the big sins. Amr Reb Nachum Bar Yitzchak answers, you're right, but I'll tell you the pshat. Which means a candle you can bring in to holes, and tzedakah are cracks. What does he say? Holes and cracks? Holes and cracks. On Avuka, a torch, it's taka much more light, but you can't bring it into holes and cracks. Why? Because it's a torch. It's a big torch, and a candle, which is a smaller flame, lends itself to be able to enter into a crevice, a little hole, a little crack, and be able to search for the chametz over there. So that's why they wanted dafke a ner. This is Reb Nachum Bar Yitzchak's vart. According to this reason, it would mean if you happen to have a state-of-the-art home and there's no cracks and holes in your house, because when your balabasta sees a crack, it immediately gets fixed within a mess less, then l'chayre wouldn't be a problem. An avuka would be great, wonderful. The problem is, most homes have churim is doken. So that would be the svar of Reb Nachum Bar Yitzchak. Okay. Weiter. Reb Zvid says no. I'll tell you another reason. Ze'ir l'fanav v'ze'ir l'acharav. A neir gives you light in front of you. An avuka gives you light in back of you. Meaning, because it's so much light, it actually blinds you in front of you. For the back of you, it's actually very good, because there's somewhat of a separation. Your body creates a little bit of a partition between the intensity of the light and that which is behind you. So actually, if you would be walking behind yourself, or let's put it this way, if somebody else was holding an avuka and leading the way, and you're doing b'dikas chametz behind them, Rabbi Zvid says it works well. But that's an unusual situation. That opportunity is not always available. You're holding the torch yourself, and you not being boidik behind you, you're being boidik right here, and it's sometimes too much light. Too much light doesn't do the job, and that's why you need oir haner, because the oir avuk is too blinding. Could
be good. Like further ahead, the torch is good also.
Further. Way ahead it's good, and for behind you it's good. For behind you. Right. For behind you it's good. That means that according to the B'zvid, even in a house where there's no holes and no cracks, which according to Reb Nachman you could use an avuka, Reb Zvit says, I have another problem. My problem is not holes and cracks. My problem is even the regular territory in the house. It would not do me well if I have an avukah, but according to Reb Zvit, if there's two people doing it and you're holding the torch and I'm doing the bdika, it would be good. So the Gemara gives a third reason. Rav Papa says, and Rabbi Yaakov, you said this reason, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, Hai boyis v'hai loy boyis. Person holding a torch is scared. It's a big fire, and you're very conscientious, and you're very cautious, and you're very worried. Last thing you need the night before Pesach is for the house to burn down, chas v'shalom. V'hai loy boyis. When you're holding a candle, it's not scary, and therefore, because a person has to be focused on b'dikas chametz, not on protecting his house, because then you can't focus on b'dikas chametz. So therefore the Chazal said, use a candle and do not use an avukah, do not use a torch. So what is Rav Papa telling us? Even if you have a torch that's not so blinding, let's say a smaller avukah, still, if it's a torch, if it's a larger flame than a nair where there's fear, you should not be using it for b'dikas chametz. According to Rav Papa l'cha'ira, if two people are doing b'dikas chametz, it would also work, just like Reb Zvit. Because if you're holding the torch and you're focusing on the protection of it, and I'm doing the b'dika, then you could say, according to Rav Papa, it would also work, like Reb Zvit, for a different reason. Then comes the last one.
The question was also on the candle, on the single there. Doesn't the person afraid that he's going to light up a...
Well, you all know, we do a nair. I mean, it's much...
You can't really do a good b'dika with it. If I got a flashlight, then I'm doing a good b'dika. If I've got a single candle, then I'm worried about the wax spilling, and I'm worried about lighting some fabric or something. So it seems to me pro forma. And I know I'm wrong, I know the Gemarah says differently, but how is it any less of a fear just because it's less of a flame? It's still a flame, and it's combustible with something else.
No, just much more containable, I think. Because of its size.
Doesn't it constrain the person's ability to live that anymore where they didn't have really anything in common but a fear?
Right.
That's understandable, but today you're saying you shouldn't worry about it, you should just do it and be careful. That seems to be the story.
They just, when they were masaka b'dikas chametz, they wanted it should be with something. It was at night, so, right?
Yeah, I get that. In the times of the Gemara, I'm asking today, a person has a kit, and it's got to do with a candle, and yet at the same time we're not constrained by the limitation in our technology. We have flashlights. So today,
You're asking about today, using a flashlight.
It was, is that I'm worried that I'm going to light something up because I'm...
It's a very interesting question. I'll discuss it in a moment. I'll mention something. Let's see the fourth answer. Ravina says, Hai moshach nohera v'hai miktafik tufi. The light, the flame of a candle is consistent. V'hai miktafik tufi, where the light of the torch jumps around. Did I translate it correctly? What does he say? What's moshach nohera?
The light of the candle is steady, the light of the torch flickers.
The light of the torch flickers. That's miktafik tufi. And the light of the candle is much more steady, because the light of the candle it is what it is. It's a steady flame. The light of the torch increases and then decreases. It flickers, it dances, and therefore it's harder to be boidik. And what he's basically saying is that the nature of a person's eye is it expands in darkness and it shrinks in light. And that's how we can absorb the light in a proper way, because our eye knows to shrink, when it's light. When I'm using an avukah and the light is flickering bigger and smaller, so therefore what happens is it actually affects my vision. So Ravina says that's why a neir is actually better than an avukah. Rashi says, Oirei la'acharav, va'adam ha'echaz elefanav hu boidik, hilchachen yafa lebdika. Bayis misyarish yavares abayis vein liba labdika yafa. Hai mashich nahira oiranen nimshich umayrich b'mkaim ve'ene doilik b'kfitzos. Doesn't jump around, so to speak. Ela noch b'makam echad. It's serene, it's restful in one place. Miktafik tufi nifsik v'koifetz tamid. It's always jumping and flickering. Lashon ha'koitfim aluach, and therefore Ravina says not to use an avukah. So we have four reasons. Reb Nachman says, because we want to get it into the cracks, you can't use a torch. Reb Zvit says, because you're being boidik, what is in front of you, not what is behind you, and an avukah is more blinding. Rav Papa says an avukah creates fear and you won't concentrate on the bdika. And Ravina says, because the light is consistent and does not flicker. The light of the flame is steady. The question that came up in our generation was a flashlight. Could a flashlight or a similar source of light has all the milos? You can get it into the holes and the cracks, right? There's a crack, you could look. And it doesn't blind you, and it's consistent. If you have a battery. And you're not afraid it's going to burn down the house, etc. So it's an interesting question, and a lot of the poskim talk about it. I saw, for example, Rabbi Vadia Yosef was matirit. A lot of the poskim say it actually works. The qualities that the Gemara describes of Eir HaNeir actually work. So a lot of poskim are matirit. I think most of them add, though, that nonetheless, since the Chazal were masakin Eir HaNeir, so even though it would be a kosher b'dikas chametz and you wouldn't be transgressing anything, on the contrary, it works perfectly well. But since the Chazal were masakin Eir HaNeir, and they have all the psukim that the Gemara brings, therefore it's hard to say don't use a neir anymore and just use a flashlight. But essentially, there are those who argue that you shouldn't, but I think many poskim have seen various truvas where they were completely matirit bisman hazeh, and others even say there's a maila, because as you said, with a candle, you're busy with the wax, and you're clumsy, and you're still afraid, and even though it's not an avuka, I just also want to describe, you have to understand, b'dikas chametz then was now a b'dikas chametz today. Baruch Hashem, many people live in very big houses, and even people who live in small houses, relative to the houses then, it's considered a palace and a mansion. And you go from room to room, and there's a lot of things to be boidik, and people have boidik, even things they don't have to be boidik, they're boidik, yeah? You have to understand that b'dikas chametz, for many generations, it was a much more simple process. If you had a house with one room or two rooms, it was a gewaldike chiddush. Generally, a home with one room was already a luxury. The Gemara says a wealthy person is somebody who has a table and nearby has a beis hakiseh, is considered a wealthy person. Today, that's not considered wealth in the furthest stretch of the imagination. They have a bathroom near your table. But I'm just describing the nature of things. So you went with a candle and you went around, yeah? And the storage rooms and the closets that we have, and walk-in closets and drawers galore, and shafas and bookcases and china closets, and bookcases and drawers everywhere, and more closets, and then more closets, and then yet more closets, etc. It's just, with a candle, it can also get...
That's why we have hotels.
The
reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. The question is, if flashlights would have been, then would Chazal be masakin flashlights? Some say, yeah. And they say you could use it. Some say a lot of poskim are matir it. It's just, some are not, but a lot are, yeah. There's a big tshuva from Rabbi Vadia Yosef, where he's clearly matir it, and others, even though some argue. But I think many of them add that still kedai to use Eir HaNeir.
They argue, Mr. because of mini, because of, not because of what's going to be the more...
Right. It sounds like, based on the qualifications of the Gemara, that to this. It's just because the Gemara is so into the psukim, achapis yishlayim b'neir, the Gemara repeats it 3 times, and over there it's neir, so therefore it seems like the Eir HaNeir has some significance, and sometimes it's not only on a physical level. When it comes to halacha, there's also spiritual dimensions as well. You know what I mean?
From my own personal experience,
yes,
using a little candle, somehow it casts a shadow. And you can see very easily little crumbs and so on that you wouldn't see with snow.
Interesting. That's what he's saying. You're saying you experience what the B'zvid said. If you had a stronger light, you're not going to see the crumbs. Okay, so if you put on the light in your room, you're not going to see it. Okay? Where are your crumbs? Where? They don't clean the kitchen before. So you actually do a real b'dikas chametz. You do a b'dikas chametz, and you're saying for the crumbs, the candle is much better. What about a flashlight? Not the same. Okay.
So how does that work when you have every room lit up today with a little candle? How does it?
Yeah.
You have to turn up all the lights in order to make the candle effective. In order to see the shadows cast by the small particles. Sometimes it's better to turn off the candle.
Some say to turn off the lights and use a candle that way. I have seen that, because then the candle becomes effective. Right. While others say that they find that to be ludicrous, because the room is bright, And for that, obviously, the light will show you everything. However, if there's places that the light doesn't reach, right? So then with that, go with the candle. You know, maybe under the bed where it's dark, or under the bookcase where it's dark. If it's a place to machnisim by chametz, over there the candle will be effective to shut the lights. But others,
Who finds chametz today?
You saying b'chlal who finds chametz?
Chametz today.
You don't even look.
Today you're already.
You're saying some makom shem machnisim by chametz. You're right. Then you don't need b'dikah. You're right. If it's a room where there's no chametz, and there's no chashash that there's chametz, not even a chashash, you don't have to be b'dik there. You're right. You're saying it's just zeichel l'mikdash. Keinasa hillel. But you hear Rabbi Litzman finds crumbs. That's why I was shocked. Where do you find crumbs? We have to talk to your wife.
It doesn't mean he finds. He says
No, he says he finds crumbs and he likes candles because they cast a shadow on the crumbs.
If you have little children, around the rain block, you're going to find crumbs. No matter what.
He doesn't chase out the kids for a month before Pesach. He doesn't chase out all the kids a month before Pesach.
What do you do when you, in this situation, you know, you're doing what the biggest. Your wife worked very hard cleaning the house.
Yeah.
And while you're picking up the regular breakfast, you notice under the couch some bread. Do you do it now, or you just make yourself a note and later, when everybody's sleeping, you clean it out? Not to embarrass your wife.
Yeah.
You're never supposed to embarrass your wife. You have to figure out a way of doing the right thing without embarrassing your wife.
You could help to do the cleaning before.
Thank you.
I moved from Crown Heights to Monsey, people sitting in the basement in the corner 3 weeks before Pesach and eating lunch over a bag.
Yes, we all grew up that way. Yes, we all grew up that way. Not you, but some of us grew up that way. And the Shabbos before Pesach, forget about that. You remember that Shabbos?
people a month
Yeah.
before Pesach.
Yeah, some people a year before Pesach, actually.
Our dining room is off limits already.
From Tishrei. Yeah. Okay, yeah. But Chlal, what are dining rooms made for? They're not made to use. Pesach is coming. It's just when you sell the house, you want to say there's a nice dining room. You shouldn't be using a dining room for food. Too many hazards. Chlal, a house is a problem also.
This question I'm asking about the nair and the flashlight.
Yeah.
Does it fall into whether using the nair is a halacha or a minhag? Do they discuss that? Or is it...
Well, it's a halacha to use the nair, but what they're saying is that the characteristics that the Gemarah attributes to the nair you have there too. It's a halacha that you have to use a nair.
So then you would use a flashlight. You got to use the nair. It sounds like.
No, so they're saying since the Gemarah gives the reason, it's not stam. So therefore, it's a very interesting discussion. Others argue, others say no. The Paul the minig by most Jews, I think, is to still use a nair.
Yeah. Even if
Right, even if it's mutter, even for just for nostalgic purposes, and also it brings out something. Yeah. It's interesting that. Still, I'm just thinking. The tzaddikim by the Shechina are like a ner b'fnei avuka. What's the meaning of this? Like, what's the point? What is it ever trying to say? That they're not like the Shechina? Don't think you're going to be like God. God is the torch. You're only a candle. Okay, say that. It's a much deeper idea. It's explained in Svarim, especially in Svarim of Machshava, Kabbalah, of Chassidus. When you have an avuka, when you have a near an avuka, when you have a huge bonfire, right, and you bring a candle close, what happens?
goes towards the
Huh?
the light of the sun goes towards the
The neir gravitates to the avuka and it gets subsumed. It becomes nichlal. It becomes submerged in the avuka, right? If you want to retain the neir as a separate entity, you have to go far. If you come close to the avuka, fire gravitates to fire and it gets absorbed in the larger fire. The avuka here represents the Shechina. That's the infinite light. That light encompasses everything. But then there's a neir. What's a neir? The neir is the individual neshama, which is a chelek eloikami mal, mamish, but it gets, so to speak, separated from the avuka, and it comes into a body, and it comes into the world, and now it's a self-contained neir, neir Hashem nishmas adam. The way it becomes a neshama of a person, it becomes a neir, which is, so to speak, separate from the avuka. And that's why it could be a neir, because it's separate from the avuka. The avuka is the huge flame that's infinite. The neir is, so to speak, how it separates. That's why it's called, the neshama is called a chelik elikam mimal. So people ask a question, Hashem has parts. Chelik elikam mimal, a part of Hashem. What's like you cut an apple? I understand you take an apple. Kids are fighting over an apple or a birthday cake. You cut it into parts. You get a chelik, I get a... Well, the neshama is chelik elikam mimal. In all the svarim, chelik elikam mimal. Chelik elikam, Hashem has parts, chalokim. There was a Jewish philosopher, Menashe ben Yisrael, he has a sefer Nishmas Chaim. He blasts the term chelik elikam mimal. He says it's kfir and apikursis and minas, it's heresy. He was a great Jew, but he didn't know about this Torah, Pnimis Torah. It wasn't his thing. But in all the svarim, chelik elikam mimal, Rishonim, Achronim, Kabbalah. The pshat, of course, doesn't mean Hashem has parts. A mashal would be like a child with a parent. A child comes from the seed, from the sperm and the egg of the parent. Before the egg and the sperm became an embryo, it was all part of the father and the mother, completely one with them. What's pshat? A child gets developed, an embryo develops, and a fetus grows and it gets born. It becomes separate. What does it mean it becomes separate? It's not that the father and the mother, a part of them is cut off. It means it's the way the essence of the father and mother is transported into a new reality. Bra karadavua. A child is part of a father and a mother forever. You care about your child sometimes more than you care about yourself. But it's the way yourself comes into a separate and distinct realm. The neshama is chelik elikam mimal kevayachol. It's the way elikus, the way godliness enters into a neir, a self-contained entity, which is called nishmas adam. B'shas, the neir comes b'fnei ha'avuka. When the neir comes in the presence of the avuka, then the neir becomes completely bottle. It doesn't shine separately, because it's really part of the avuka. And that's what neir Hashem nishmas adam means, like the neir gravitates to go back to the avuka. And if the avuka was fully present and manifested, there wouldn't be separateness. There would be only oneness.
But doesn't that analogy fall short? Because the chiyas that the neshama has is different in time than what a parent gives the...
Yeah, indeed, yeah. I'm just in one detail, yeah.
So is there something that, there's nothing that you could, there's no...
Right, yeah.
It's just, it's an
Right,
example of
right,
sort of
yeah.
like this.
So that's what he says, that tzaddik, before the shechina, that's the neir which comes from the avuka. It's a derivative from the avuka. And when it's in the presence of the avuka, there's no neir in avuka, it's completely one. The tzaddik, who is a person in this world, represents the neir, which is the way the divine enters into the consciousness of a person who's living out the divine light in their modality. That's the concept of a neir. If so, it could be that that's why the Gemarah brings it. The Gemarah could have said, an avuka is stronger, you don't need Rava to bring me a pasuk that an avuka is bigger, tzaddikim shchina. But the Gemarah is also explaining it on a deeper level. B'dikas chametz, you can't do with an avuka. B'dikas chametz, you have to do with a ner. Because in the world of avuka, there's no chametz. The whole concept of b'dikas chametz means, what's chametz? Chametz is egotism, yeshus, inflated arrogance. In the world of the avuka, there's no chametz. In the world of the avuka, there's oneness. In the world of the ner, there could be b'dikas chametz. So avuka is taka greater light, but that explains gufa why in the world of the avuka there's no chametz. For havdalah, Rava says, you need an avuka. When you have an avuka, there's automatically havdalah, there's separation. What's light, what's darkness? Mitzvah min hamufcha for havdalah. B'dikas chametz, you're trying to find the chametz, so you use a ner, you don't use an avuk. I'll call upon him. So the Gemarah established why you have to do it l'or haner, and dafka l'or haner, not the sun, not the moon, and not even the or havuk. Zog the Gemarah, kol makom she'em machnisim bei chametz ein tzarich b'dika. Any place where you don't bring in chametz, the Mishnah continues, right? Kol makom she'em machnisim bei chametz. Any place that you don't bring in chametz, you don't have to do b'dika. That's what the first Mishnah told us, right after l'or haner. Frag the Gemarah, kol makom lasuya mayim. Why does it say kol makom? What does kol makom add? The Mishnah could have said, what's kol makom? a place where you don't bring in chametz, you don't need b'dika. What's every place? Could have said a makom. Every word in the Mishnah is precise, as we explained, that the Tana put into the words of the Mishnah the whole depth. What does the word kol teach me? Kol makom, any place. So the Gemara answers that from here we see that there's places that they would not be included in makom shein machnisim by chametz. If it says a place where you don't bring in chametz, you wouldn't include those places. And therefore you would be boidik. And that's why he says kol makom. He's trying to add a particular location that wouldn't be included in makom. What is that kol? What is he trying to teach us? So the Gemara says la asuya, to include hadatana rabbanon. That which is stated in a brisa, but the brisa states it explicitly, and the Mishnah intimates it through the word kol makom. The brisa tells us choyrei bayis, when you have holes, crevices in the walls of a home, hal yoinim batachtoinim, those that are higher and those which are lower, the holes which are on top, they're very high, so it's hard to reach them, and they're very low, so it's uncomfortable to reach them because you have to get down. Those holes, whether they're al-yoinim, they're high, or tachtoinim, they're close to the ground, so it's not easy to reach them. Because if it's very high, you have to climb, and it's a tircha to get up there. And if it's very low, meaning you have to get down on your feet, so therefore it's not a comfortable place to use. Of course, we're not talking about if there's children who are hanging around and, putting their cake and candies into those holes, then it changes. We're talking about a house where you know that that's not the fact, where that's not the reality. Next, the gag hayotzia. Gag hayotzia is a storage room, a room that was storage, and it usually had a roof that was slanted. It wasn't a flat roof. So therefore, you don't want to put things there because it's going to fall. The gag hamigdal. Gag hamigdal means the roof of a tower, which means you have a very large piece of furniture where you put food there, or you put dishes there, but the roof on top of it, it's migdal, it's a tower, meaning it's very tall, like from the word gadol. So therefore, again, it's not geschmack, it's not easy to put things there. You have to bring a ladder, you have to climb. Or refes bakar is a stable?
Corral?
Cattle barn. Yeah.
A barn for cattle. Velulin is a coop, a chicken coop. Refes bakar is a barn for cattle, like cows, oxen. Lulin is a chicken coop. Umatvein is a storage place for straw. V'oitzrus yayin, and storage places of wine. V'oitzrus shemen, and storage places for oil. Ein tzrichim b'dika. None of these places need b'dika. Why? The holes on the top and on the bottom are inconvenient to use, so therefore we don't assume that there's chametz there. The gag hayotzia is slanty, or the gag hamigdal, again, people don't put things there, chametz, so therefore we don't have to do b'dika. A cattle barn or a chicken coop, you don't have to do b'dika, because even if there's chametz there, we assume that the chickens or the cattle have eaten them up. And the storage places of wine and oil, we assume there's no b'dika because people don't put in chametz there. It's a place of wine, a place of oil. It's not a place to put bread or other chametz. That's why the Mishnah says koil, to include all of these places. If the Mishnah would have said ein makom she'ein machnisim by chametz, you would say a chicken coop is a place where you do bring in chametz. You feed your chickens. A refes is a place where you do bring in chametz. It's not a makom she'ein machnisim by chametz. So that's why the Tana has to say kol makom she'ein machnisim by chametz, because every place where you assume that the animals ate it up is like a place where you didn't bring in chametz. The same is true with the holes on the top and on the bottom. You could say, since this is a room where I always bring in chametz, it's my dining room, it's my kitchen, there's a hole there, I can't say it's a makom she'en machnisim by chametz. It is a makom she'en machnisim by chametz, because the room is a place that you bring in chametz. So therefore you have to say that what? That the holes are maybe not included in the p'tur of b'dika. That's what it says. Kol makom. What's the kol? That even within places where you bring in chametz, but you can assume, likely, in all likelihood, that you didn't use those holes for chametz. Again, we're talking about in a case where there's no children or others who may have used those holes, so then you don't have to do b'dikas chametz. The same is true when it comes to the roof, the slanty roof, or the roof, the tall roof, or the places of wine and oil. All these places, I can't say makom she'ein machnisim by chametz. Why? I may walk into my wine cellar with bread, eating a bagel. It may happen, right? But since It's not likely to happen. So therefore, it's included in the kol. That's the chiddush of the kol.
If it's local, you can assume that the Bahamas need all the chumrah.
Yeah. You can assume, and therefore you don't have to do b'dikas chametz in the chicken coop or the cattle barn. Again, if you see chametz there, we're talking about if you have to do b'dika. If you see chametz there, then you can't rely on it. But you don't have to do b'dika.
Flat roof also.
If it's a flat roof in the house that's not so high, and it's convenient to use, then you have to do b'dika.
Like chutzner, it's open.
Indoors, we're talking indoors.
Flat roof and
No, the gag hayetzia. Oh, you're asking if it's a gag outdoors.
Right.
So l'chayre l'maynaf kamina because the birds come. Very good. It's probably some Rishonim say it's talking about indoors. The yetzia, the storage room, is indoors. Yeah, like some type of storage room with a roof on it, not a roof outdoors. Then you're right. Yeah. That's one way of learning it. Yeah, that it's indoors. Yeah. Reb Shimon Gamliel says, if you have a bed that splits a room into two, chelekas means it splits the house into two. So basically, the bed creates two bedrooms. You use one side for one purpose, the other side for another purpose. Umafsekas, and the legs of the bed are tall, so therefore there's a partition between the bed and the ground and the earth. Tzricha b'dika, this needs b'dika. This needs b'dika. In other words, when you have a bed in the middle of the room, and you use both sides of the room, and you have a bed to create a mechitza partition. Why? So you want to use each side for a different purpose. So since you're using both sides of the bed, and the legs are tall, so there is space, so therefore we should be cautious that chametz has come under the bed, and therefore you have to do b'dika. It would seem that if it's in the corner of the room, and you're not using the place under the bed, then the halacha might change, unless you know otherwise. That's why, it seems from Rashi, he's talking about a bed that splits the room into two. In other words, you're using the area around the bed, because both sides you want to use for a purpose. It's not just that the bed is quarantined in a corner. Frag the Gemarah v'Raminu.
It's not the regular bedroom.
Right.
But I learned you got to look under the bed.
Well, if it's a makom shemachnisim by chametz, then even if the bed is in the corner, you have to look, yeah? Especially you have a child's bedroom, where the children come into the parents' bedroom. Take a look in Rashi. Hachaylekes, ma'amidin oisa b'makom mechitza lechalek tashmishi abayis v'urcha demil sanakat. He's just saying the common situation. Mita hachaylekes b'tei chabayis. He's trying to describe that's the common situation.
The one-room house.
Right. Mita chelekas b'tei chabayis. In other words, because usually you put a bed in the corner of the room. You don't put it in the middle. When do you put it in the middle? You put it in the middle in order to split the room into two. Mafsekas yesh hefsek ben shulel lekagish ragleh gvoyim lamatam. V'Raminu asks the Gemara, we just learned this whole brayse that was included in the kol, but we have another brayse. The brayse says, Chur sheben adam l'chavere. If you have a hole between one person and another person, in other words, our homes share a wall, and there's a crevice in the wall, and the hole goes through and through. The problem is it's a thick wall. Because it's a thick wall, so I can't be boidik all the way to your side. I Parshas can't fit my hand through the hole all the way. It's a thick wall. So he says, Zeh boidik ad makom sheyodei magas. And it's a place where there might be chametz. So you're boidik till where your hand reaches. V'zeh boidik ad makom sheyodei magas. He's boidik till where his hand reaches. V'hashar, what about the rest? There's still place in the middle. Mevatel b'liboy. Each of you should be at mevatel in your heart. In other words, it may be that a piece of chametz has rolled into that location and you have not done the b'dika because your hand can't reach there. So it's fine. The Chachamim didn't say you have to go and find eitzes. You just do bittul and that would be enough. Because since your hand can't reach there, obviously you're not using that place because you can't get there. So you don't need b'dika. You don't need b'dika because you don't put chametz there because you can't get there. Elamai, we're afraid that maybe a piece of chametz rolled into there without your initiative.
Is this a specific,
So you could just do bittul.
is this a specific bittul, or is it included totally in the bittul that you're doing anyhow?
This is the bittul we're doing anyhow. We'll include this. Basically, in the bittul after b'dikas chametz, we'll say all the chametz that I have not found and have not seen is levatel. This includes this type of chametz. Yeah. To say that you use it for chametz, you don't, because your hand can't get there. How do you use it for chametz? But you may have put in a piece of bread and something may have happened. It rolled over. So both of you do bittul and you're good. But zeh boy the gad makom shodim magas. Don't worry about it. You have to do b'dika till where you could reach. If there's a piece of chametz there, and it says, and the Chaim say, even if you know that there's a piece of chametz there, but you can't get to it, right? So you could do bittul. That would be enough.
For sure, don't worry about your neighbor's chametz. Don't look into their chametz.
Yeah. I once saw a vart, one of the svarim, I think a Karlina vart, Chakalina. Beis Aden, he says that the Gemara also speaks so spiritually. Sometimes there's a chur between a person and his friend. There's a hole, basically, a vacuum. The relationship goes sour. There's a hole in the relationship, as you say. It gets pierced. The connection gets pierced. So he says naturally everybody blames the other one. He says, no, you be boidik atche yader magas. You be boidik your side and let him be boidik the other side, and then the rest you'll be mavatul. Don't wait and say the other person is guilty. He's the one who's responsible. You take responsibility for your part. Let him you take responsibility for your part, and the rest the rest will get bottled. Sashay nevart, huh? Sashay nevart and Lebanon. Don't say it's your problem, it's your hole. You be boidik. You be boidik till where you can a little bit boidik. A kalina vart based on it. Yeah. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, if you have a bed that separates in the house, and you have wood or stones under it, and it separates. In other words, the legs are tall, so there's a partition. It doesn't need bdika. So the Bryce is basically explaining.
Yes. What means separates?
You have a bed, and it separates a room into two. And under the bed, you have wood, and you have stones, and the legs are tall, so there's a place, mafsekas, between the bottom of the bed and the ground, so you don't need b'dika. You don't need b'dika in that place. The second brisa contradicts the first one. Bed on bed and holes on holes. Why? This brisa is telling us the places that don't need b'dika. So Tanakama says, the hole between you and your friend, you don't need b'dika after where your hand reaches. But till where your hand reaches does need b'dika. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel as the bottom of the bed, if there's wood and there's stones, also doesn't need b'dika. Why? You could do bittul, but you don't do b'dika. Asks the Gemarah, kasha mita mita, kasha chayren achayren. Reb Gamliel in the first brisa said that when there's a bed, you have to do b'dika. Here he says you don't have to do b'dika. Kasha chayren achayren. The first brisa you told me that the holes don't need b'dika. Here you said the holes do need b'dika as far as your hands can reach. So the Gemara says no. Chayren achayren loy kasha habi loy b'tatoi habi mitzi. First brisa was talking about the higher holes on the top, the lower holes on the bottom. This is talking about the holes in the middle of the wall, which are very easy to use, and therefore it's chayiv and b'dika. Initially, we thought that the second brisa is talking about all holes, because it doesn't make a differentiation. It just says, so we assume any hole in the wall. So that would be a contradiction to the first brisa. So the Gemara says, okay, no, the second brisa is talking about holes in the middle of the wall, but if it would be a hole on the top of the wall or on the bottom of the wall, that would be awkward, uncomfortable to use. You don't need b'dika, even in the beginning of the hole. Forget about the middle of the hole where it's too hard to get. So that's no contradiction. From the bed, on the bed, there's no question. The medallion. The first brisa is talking about medallion. The legs are very tall and it's easy to go under the bed and put things there. The second brisa is talking about a lower bed. So therefore, again, the space between the bottom of the bed and the ground is much less. And therefore, it's much more cumbersome. It's uncomfortable to put chametz there. Which is why he puts in eitzim va'avonim is durim tachta, that there's wood and there's stones there. Why does he put that in? Because he wants to basically say that it's already stocked up with stuff. In other words, there's much less space. So to go and put it to use it as a place for chametz, it's not an easy place, and therefore it doesn't need bdika, because he wants to bring out that there's only a little space, because if you fill it up with rocks, if it's a storage place for lumber, for logs and rocks and stones, it's going to be a place, the space is not going to be that large. So again, l'chatchila, the Gemara thought he's talking about even if there's a lot of space. Nonetheless, it's pater from bdika because there's eitzim and avonim there. So he says, l'cha'ira, you could still use it for chametz, and that's what he says, that the space is very small. Again, if you know that you're using it for chametz, or you have children who have built private locations under the bed, hideouts, obviously everything changes. But we're talking about the person doesn't know, you don't have to assume that there's chametz. The first brisa told us that storage places of wine don't have bdika. V'atanya, we have a brisa, oistrus yayin tzarich bdika, oistrus shemen ain't tzarich bdika. Storage places of wine do need bdika's chametz. Only storage places of oil don't need bdika. Where the first brisa says that the yayin also doesn't need bdika. And for the Gemarah, hacha b'mayaskina, there's no need to create arguments. It's all circumstances. Hacha b'mayaskina b'mistapik. The second brisa is talking about a case where it's a type of wine cellar from which you supply yourself with wine in middle of a meal. In other words, if the wine finishes on the table, you're going to send a child or a waiter or a servant to go get wine from the cellar. That type of storage place needs bdika. Why? Because if he goes in the middle of the meal, he may go in with a piece of challah, a piece of bread, and leave it there and forget it there when he's looking for the wine, and therefore you need bdika's chametz. That's why it says oitzrus yayin sarich bdika in the second brayz. It's different type of wine cellar. But if it's a place of a cellar of wine where you don't go in the middle of a meal, it's a different type of oitz, and then you don't need bdika. If you're talking about a case where mistapik, where you may use it as a supply in the middle of the meals, and then oil too. People used oil in the middle of a meal too. So he answers, an interesting answer. Shemen, when it comes to oil, yesh kvala achila. Before the meal, you know exactly how much oil you need. Yayin ain't kvala shia. When it comes to yayin, you don't know for sure. You know? The appetite grows with wine. So for oil, the person who prepared the meal knew how much oil there is, and you prepared on the table. You're not going to be using more oil. When it comes to wine, sometimes it's time for another bottle of wine. Ain't kvalish siya, so you might send them in the middle of the meal. That's why oitzrus shemen, simply, practically, usually not a place where there's going to be chametz. Where oitzrus yayin, you have to know what type of oitzrus yayin it is.
Filled with actual wine, or was it more of a setup, something that was to be mixed?
Excellent question. So that's what you have to see. What type of oitzer it was. What type of wine storage room it was.
What were they knowing to do in those days? Was it a paste that they had to mix? In which case?
Usually they had to dilute the wine, yeah. Dilute the wine. But you can have barrels that were already diluted or barrels that were not diluted yet. Tari Reb Chia said, Asu oitzrus sheicha bevavel ka oitzrus yayin beretz Yisrael b'mistapik. The Chachamim of Bavel considered storage places of beer in Babylonia. Now, this doesn't mean beer made from grain, because then you have a much bigger problem than bread. This is made from figs, right? Or dates or figs. So it's not chametz. But they treated it like storage places of wine and Eretz Yisrael b'mistapik. Meaning, when you have a storage place of beer made of figs, and you use it in the middle of the meal for a supply, so these oitzers need bdikas chametz before Pesach, because in Bavel, just like in Eretz Yisrael, they would drink wine in the middle of the meal. In Babylonia, they would drink the shecher in the middle of the meal, and therefore they gave them the same halacha, and thus you need bdikas chametz in these storage places.
Does the shecher require machmetz as well?
No, it's not chametz. If it's chametz, then you have a much bigger problem. Yeah, the chiddush here is that since they would constantly drink in the middle of the meal, so we say ein kvalish siya. Just like by wine in Eretz Yisrael, you say, you can't know before how much you're going to drink. Sometimes you drink more, sometimes you drink less. In the middle of the meal, you say we want more. So in Bavel, it was the same quality when it came to shecher. There was no kva, and therefore you would need b'dika. Okay.
The waiter would have something in his hands.
Yeah, that's the problem. The waiter, the shamish, is going to go. Right, he's going from the meal. You say, please do me a favor, get us a bottle of beer. So he goes with the challah or the bagel or whatever he's eating, the lasagna, and he puts it down. He finds the bottle and he forgets. Got to feed him too, yeah.
Say an oitzer was like
An oitzer is nafel of mapoilus if it's covered with straw or with stones.
Keep a lot of things.
Yeah, but here it's a regular storage place. It's an organized storage place. You understand?
It's not,
So there may be chametz. If it's a place where you bring in chametz, and there's even a chshtash that you bring in chametz, right? It's not like you say this place there's no chametz unless something happened. But so then you have
Nafel Mapilos means.
nafel of mapoilus. Yeah.
Oh, and that covers.
Nafel of mapoilus means, let's say there's a wall falls down or there's an earthquake.
Yeah, but like we said, there's a symbol because there's so much stuff there.
So an oitzer is if you're cleaning out a room and you're going to fill it up with straw. So that's going to be like a mapoilus. You're making it a mapoilus.
Totally filled.
Yes. You're going to fill it from there to the roof. You're going to fill it with grain.
Stop having bottles
Right.
of wine.
It's an organized place. You have bottles of wine.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.